Hello, and welcome to the mentorDINO podcast. I'm your host, Katelyn Rossier. I am an architect and founder of mentorDINO. Join me each week as I speak with amazing professionals in and around the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, as we are all part of a larger interconnected community. We discuss everything from career stories, lessons learned, and advice for others finding their own unique career path. Thank you to all of our current subscribers, and if you're new, welcome to the conversation. And if you like this episode, please do me a favor by hitting subscribe, like, or share it with a friend. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support them on their own unique career journey. On today's episode of the mentorDINO podcast, I would like to welcome Tooba Jalal, architectural designer at WRA Architects in Austin, Texas. Thank you so much, Tooba, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you, Katelyn. I'm really excited to be here.
So I always start out with my loaded question, if you don't mind introducing yourself to my listeners to let them know a little bit about your experience and journey so far in your education and career.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I'm an architectural designer here at WRA Architects in Austin, Texas. But I just recently moved here a year ago. I used to be working in New York City before that. But I'll just reel it back all the way to when I first started my architectural journey. So I am originally from Pakistan, and in Pakistan I lived in Karachi, which is like a huge, big city. It's kind of like the New York of Pakistan. And that's where I did my undergrad at the Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture, a 5-year bachelor's of architecture. And after I graduated, I worked for like almost a year and a half in Pakistan. And then I always wanted to come for a graduate course in the US. So I ended up coming to Virginia Tech, which is in Plattsburgh, Virginia. So that's sort of how I landed in the US in 2017. I did a 2 years MArch there. I got to travel with my studio. I did like a semester abroad in Europe. So I got to do a lot of fun stuff while I was in college. And then after I completed my studies, I was lucky enough to find a job in Washington, D.C. At a firm called CGS Architects. And that's where I kind of started working on a lot of K to 12 projects, which is what I do now as well. So for my time in DC, I was at that firm. COVID happened during that time. So a lot of working from home. And then I also used that time to get involved with AIA and all that. And I guess we'll talk about that later. Yes. And then after being there for a few years, I really wanted to go to New York, work on different things like cultural projects. And in 2022, I just made that decision and I found a job at Cooper Robinson. And I ended up coming to New York City. And it was really exciting because I worked on my first project there was called the AKG Buffalo Art Museum, which is this huge museum in Buffalo, which was being designed by OMA, and we were the executive architects for that. So that kind of like became this huge career moment for me. And yeah, I worked there for a couple of years, worked on a lot of interesting art museums and country clubs and different things. And then life had its own way, and I ended up coming to Austin. I have some family here, so it made sense to move here. And then I'm back at doing K to 12 at WRA. So yeah, so it's been an interesting career and journey back and forth between culture and K to 12, and um, so far it's been super exciting.
Yeah, no, I got so many questions. So what originally got you interested in architecture? I know I haven't spent time over in Pakistan, so how does that like influence your interest in starting to study for architecture?
Yeah, well, I have no architects in my family, so there was no exposure to being an architect growing up. Both my parents are not in the creative field, so it was more sort of like just by different things I encountered growing up that I ended up in architecture. So before anything, I wanted to become an archaeologist because
Hmm.
I really loved history, and I think that's kind of like where the seed was planted for exploring like the Roman culture or the Greek
Hmm.
history and the Egyptian pyramids and everything. And I was super excited about learning about those civilizations. But then I quickly realized that, okay, I'm not cut out to be an archaeologist. I cannot spend so much time outside. digging up things. And then as I got into high school, I was super interested in becoming a pastry chef, and I really wanted to become a chef. But then I was like, there are not a lot of places in Pakistan that I would have to basically leave Pakistan to go get my culinary
Mm.
degree or whatever. So I was like, I'm not ready for it right now. So I said, I'll just leave it as a hobby. But then while I was still in high school, we would travel a lot because my mom really loved traveling. So she would always plan our summer vacations. And that year, I think it was my sophomore year in high school or something, we came to London, and I was just like here in London. We were, I think, going to go to the British Museum or something, and I was like, this seems like something like I want to explore architecture. So it was kind of like an epiphany moment. Like I love history, I love cultures, I love traveling. I clearly have an eye for detail if I want to be a pastry chef. So why not do the next best thing and become an architect? So as soon as I got back home after the vacation, I was like, let's look at what colleges are there in Pakistan. And I was very lucky that in Karachi, where I grew up, we have one of the best colleges for architecture, which is the Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture. It's an art school, but they also have a really good architecture program. So it's a very holistic education on not just architecture, but art in general, which is what I really
Hmm.
love. And that's kind of where I just decided, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I was lucky enough to get into that college, and then there was 5 years of grueling architecture school, and there were a lot of times when you question yourself, should I give up? But I kept with it, and it then worked out. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how art. I always find it fascinating learning about architecture programs outside the United States and how similar and dissimilar things are.
Yeah.
Like learning, even like getting into different universities is different. Like I was talking to somebody, they had to draw a whole like Greek sculpture and hand
Oh
sketch
wow.
it to get into their program. And I'm like, I'm glad I didn't have to do that for mine.
Yeah.
But how was that bachelor degree architecture studying experience versus that master's degree
hmm
experience?
Yeah. So I mean, architecture school in Pakistan, they're mostly a 5 year bachelor's program. That's the most popular kind we have, and because I went to an art school, we did have to, like, you have to pass an art entrance exam. So you do have to have like this. They put up this crazy still life in front of you, and you have to
Mhm,
sketch it. So there is a sketching exam, and then they give you different sketching scenarios. Like it was so weird, they put all these chairs like mashed into each other, and it's like this crazy sculpture out of chairs, and they're like, now just sketch it. And just simple pencil sketching. There was also like a critical thinking exam, so they would give you scenarios and they would ask you, how would you do this? So it was just to try to see how do you think. And then
mhm,
like a general knowledge exam. And then so it was not your standard. Like I don't know how people apply for college in the US in undergrad, but that was a different experience from my graduate entrance exam or entrance procedure. And the course itself in Pakistan, um, if I compare it to what I saw at Virginia Tech for undergrad, it was kind of similar. Like the first year was all about just foundational studies, so we didn't really even study much about architecture except like
mhm,
architecture history, but mostly it was all about learning the basics of design, like what is hierarchy and the different principles. And we were also made to experiment with a lot of materials. So we had a whole course called materials, where we would one every week we would be assigned something new. So this week is wood week, so we would make something out of wood, or this is clay week, so we will do something with clay, just to learn the qualities and the extent of which material we can use and what it can do. And because architecture was one of the courses you could take, you could also become a fine artist, a textile designer, a ceramist, or whatever. So we all studied together in the first year, and then second year onwards, we all went into our majors, and I went into architecture. But we kind of all build our foundational studies together. And that kind of education really has made me appreciate what I do even more, because I'm not very just about design. It's all about other kinds of designs that I really enjoy. I
mhm,
love graphic design, I love textiles. And I think if you have interests outside of architecture, you can bring those influences into your work. Because the environment in the college was such that you saw everyone's work, and it kind of influenced you. It was also very tough because our professors were really like, you have to provide all these models and things. So it wasn't like an easy course, but now that I look back at it, that education is really priceless because it taught me so much about everything in art. And then when I came to the US to do my grad studies, so it was a 2-year course at Virginia Tech, and the first year or the first 2 semesters were studio based, and then the last 2 semesters were basically your thesis. So it was independent study exploration, which I really enjoyed because when I did my thesis in Pakistan, I didn't know a lot, so I was just doing whatever. But then I learned from my mistakes. I was like really
Mm-hmm.
excited to explore a certain topic and study. And then I got this amazing opportunity at Virginia Tech to go study abroad during my thesis because Virginia Tech has an architectural residency program in a small town in Switzerland where
Mm-hmm.
they take 20 students every semester. And I was able to go with a professor there, travel all over Europe, and also work on my thesis, which was challenging, but again, really rewarding. So that was a very different experience from my time in Pakistan. We did travel a lot while we were in Pakistan, but we will travel more locally to local places. But this was like all the things I studied about architecture, all the masters, the European architecture, can now go see it. We also
Mm-hmm.
got to live in some of the spaces, like we went to some of Le Corbusier's spaces. We stayed at Rocham and La Tourette. It was like amazing. So I'm very lucky because I had a more basic understanding of local architecture in Pakistan, and then I came and I got a more international outlook on different things happening all over the world. Um, but yeah, the cultures are different. We're very like respectful of our professors back home. We don't even call them by their first name. And things are so much more casual in the US. Your professor's like, yeah, just call me Henry or whatever their name is. And I'm just like, I find it very awkward to call you by your first name. But once I got over that culture shock, it's been okay. And I'm still in touch with a lot of them. And I didn't really get a lot of mentorship when I was in my undergrad, but I made it a point when I got here that I'll use my professors as my mentors, and that has really helped me along in my career. So yeah, different but good
Yeah.
experiences on both ends. Yeah,
Yeah, and you also worked for a year
in
ahead of
Pakistan,
ahead
yes,
of coming over
hmm
for your master's.
yes, yes.
So did that translation work out when you kinda do that shift into practice, but then also learning from those experiences before you get over to Virginia Tech? Because I know I
hmm
didn't work in between my bachelor's and master's, I went straight,
Yeah.
and so I find when you work a little bit, you get some knowledge of experience of how to practice
hmm
that then influence your master's. So how was practicing in Pakistan?
Yeah, so when I was in Pakistan, I worked in a firm called RCOP Associates, and they also did like huge projects, like big hospitality projects, some hospitals as well. And I worked on one of their hospital projects. Yes, very different experience. If I had not done that job and directly come for a master's, I don't think I would be prepared for a master's because I wouldn't know what I wanted out of this
Mhm.
graduate program. I think once I started working, I still had an longing for more graduate studies, and I was like, I need to go explore more things that I feel like I didn't quite do it in my undergrad, and the work is not giving. It will never allow me to do that kind of research. So, but having that technical knowledge of how things work in the real world, and even though Pakistan is very different in construction methods than the US, but the ground realities I would say are the same. General contractors, consultants, those dynamics are pretty much the same how you work in
Mhm.
real life. So knowing those things when I came here really informed my studies in a different way. And even when we were designing, like our studio would be like it was a very interesting studio because it would be fourth and fifth year architecture students, or actually no, fourth year undergrad students and first year graduate students. So they were just finishing their undergrad and we were starting a master's, and the age groups were very different, experience levels were different. Some people were just fresh out of undergrad and came into grad school. Some people were like they had worked for a few years and now they're coming back to studies. So the designs that would come out of the same design brief would be different. And you could
Mhm.
see who's thinking more conceptually and who's thinking more realistically. And it
Yeah.
allowed like people to sort of like break away from like their usual to start experimenting. But having that technical knowledge, I would say this is like my advice to anyone who's thinking of going to grad school is like maybe take a year to like work in the real world in the industry, and then you'll really know what you want to go to explore at grad school. So yeah, it quite informative to have done that 1.5 year of practice.
Yeah. And then after Virginia Tech, you stayed in DC, close
Hmm.
to Virginia Tech. So
Yeah,
you've traveled so much. What
yeah.
got you to want to stay in the United States and practice here?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I first came here for my studies, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna stay back. I think I'll just go or whatever. And I being on a work visa, there's a lot of like ifs and buts and things about immigration in this country. And things were kind of different back when I graduated in 2019. It was much easier to get a job on a work visa. It's becoming harder and harder every day. But back
Mhm.
then, I graduated and I was like, most people who graduate who are on a student visa, they end up getting like something called an OPT, which allows you to practice for 12 months after you graduate. So it's like a training period. So I was like, I'll utilize that option just to see what it's like to work in the U.S. And I was very lucky because if you're in DC and you're a Virginia Tech grad, you have a lot of job opportunities because a lot of
Mhm.
alumni are there. And I started applying and I got this job at CGS Architects. And I was like, let's try it out and see. And if it's in Georgetown in DC and it's a really cute neighborhood, and I was like, I like this. I want to stay here. And then I started working and I really realized that the kind of opportunities and projects that the US industry, the architecture industry has, I would probably not have that kind of opportunities back in Pakistan. The scope is limited. And I could
Mhm.
even maybe one day, work in really big firms like Gensler and S&M, something big that's worldwide and international. So I decided, like, I guess US is a good spot to explore that kind of growth. I had thought about going to Europe when I was there for the semester abroad. I had explored it, but I thought that all like America has like a lot of opportunities and they're open to ideas, which I didn't think all other countries I visited had. So I was like, let's see what happens. And then once I started working here, then I just kept staying, and it just I made friends. I like living in the U.S., so it all just sort of ended up being okay. This is where I am now.
Yeah. And you kind of touch on this next question I had was like you've lived now in 3 cities, a year now in Austin. It's always difficult even just to find friends in new cities,
Yeah.
but then
Hmm.
also getting that foothold on your career, like getting
Hmm.
involved in either the AIA or knowing the local contractors and reps and everything. So, how have how has that experience been for you, and do you have advice for others if they're looking to, like, pick up and move to a different city in the United
Hmm.
States and kinda
Yeah.
getting their foothold again?
That's a good question because I also keep thinking what my life would be if I never left DC. Because when I did leave DC, I had like almost 2.5 years of experience, and I was at that turning point where if I decide to stay at the firm or just find another odd job somewhere in DC, my life would have taken a very different
Mhm.
career turn because I would have had more stable connections and networks. But I was like, no, I have an opportunity to go to New York. I should avail that. And what I have learned by being able to travel to different cities is that now I have connections in different parts of the US. I don't have to be only a DC architect. I can be like someone who's experienced to work on the East Coast, and now I'm in Texas, and who knows where else I might go in the future. But it's difficult, and you should need to ask yourself: are you the kind of person who is open with exploration and taking risks? But if you are not, and if you feel like you are comfortable where you are, you shouldn't force yourself. I don't think you should. My circumstances were like I want to keep exploring new kind of work opportunities, and that's kept bringing me to different cities. The AIA has been really pivotal in keeping those connections because when I started getting involved in DC, I built like I made a lot of friends through that, like the Emerging Professional Committee in DC, the Women in Architecture Committee in Northern Virginia. I made a lot of connections, and when I started thought of moving to New York, I asked the Women in Architecture Committee in Northern Virginia, can you introduce me to the committee in New York? And they were very kind enough to put me in touch. And so I was like, that became like this connection, this thread between two cities. And then I moved to New York and started going to all of those events. And then when I moved to Austin, Alexandra, who's the co-chair for the committee here, she used to live in New York. So it's like it's interesting how people start coming in your life who have
Mhm.
connections to the places you've lived in. And I feel like I'm very fortunate enough to have that kind of opportunity. Um, I can always go back to a city I've lived in. So I feel like I've never left something behind. I've added more to my, more feathers in my cap in that way. So it is difficult finding friends and finding career opportunities. But if you do see something that you are intrigued by and want to explore, I would say that definitely try it out. Especially when you're young in your career, you can take those risks to try new
Mhm.
things. Once you're more settled, maybe you have a family, you can't really move. You don't want to regret or have a regret that, oh, I didn't take that opportunity in this other city. It has been rewarding in my case, and I've made a lot of friends all over.
Yeah, and I think it's important finding that common thread that you
Yeah.
wanna carry through to the different cities because that can extend your connections, whether,
Hmm.
you're on a national board with AIA, then you start meeting people across the country in general.
Yeah.
But even if somebody's just in one of those smaller niche communities, like women in architecture tends to be in most cities
Is right.
around, that it could be a common thread. Or if they don't have a formal women in architecture, there's usually somebody that has that passion that
Hmm.
even within the AIA, somebody knows somebody to
Yeah.
connect you with. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
super helpful.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, you also have to make the effort. You can't just expect people
Yeah.
to come to you. So if you go somewhere, you just reach out. And I have found that people are really like open to helping everywhere I've been, in every city I've been. So yeah, you just have to like get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
But it there are rewards for that. Like once you take that kind of risk, but it's rewarding.
Yeah. Can't be a hobbit and sit at home all
Yes.
the time. You
Yes.
gotta go out and do things.
Yeah. Hmm.
And while you were in New York, I know you were the associate director for the New York State representative for the National Associates Committee in
Yes.
2024. So it's a mouthful.
Yes.
What were you doing with that committee, and what did you get accomplished during that term?
So it's a very interesting committee. So the National Associates Committee is basically made up of state representatives from all 52 states and also Puerto Rico, Guam, and an international associate. So basically, the AIA has different membership levels. And if you're a licensed professional, then you can put the AIA title at the end of your name. But if you're an unlicensed, like I am at the moment, I can be an associate member. So that committee represents the associate membership, which I think makes around
Mhm.
25% of the whole members within the AIA, so a significant number. And what is the committee itself is formed of all the state representatives, and I got to represent New York State. And what happened during that time is that I worked with AI New York State as well as AI National
Mhm.
to sort of like convey the issues and struggles that are happening within the New York State for young members, for young graduates, and kind of take that voice to the national level in order to like make our membership even more stronger. So a lot of issues that we tackled. The one I worked on was mostly the value of an architect. Why is an
Mhm.
architect valuable, or someone who's not licensed and unlicensed at the moment still brings value to a firm? And how can we make them feel like they are also contributing to the industry without being licensed? So it was a two-way thing to explain to young members that having an associate membership is important because it's a pathway to getting your AIA membership, and you still can make your issues aware. You make the AI national aware of your issues, but also like explaining to firms that your unlicensed employees are also equally important. Like they provide so much work, they provide so much value to the industry. And I see a lot of young professionals after being in the industry for a couple of years, they feel demotivated, especially in New York City. Living is so difficult there, rents are so high, we don't feel valued, we're working like overtime. And it's really easy to get demotivated. I have so many friends who have considered leaving the profession after after practicing for 4 or 5 years. They're like, this is not worth it. I don't think I want to
Mhm.
be in architecture. And it's really hard to leave architecture because most people really love what they do. Is that they don't feel valued. And that was kind of like where I was trying to like bridge that gap. Is that we as a profession need to bring value back to this industry, and that's to just be clear about how we deal with clients, how we make sure that they know that an architect is a service and we need to be paid on time. We need to be considered valuable when we're being talked to. So just a lot of those things. I got to do that for almost like a year
Mhm.
before I moved to Austin, and it was really fun. I You get to go to like an annual meeting. The year I was there, we went to Memphis, Tennessee, and I got to meet people from all the other 50 states. And so it's really nice to meet like your peers from other states, listen to what issues they have. I mean, I was coming from New York City. It's one of the biggest states with the most members. So we have so many resources, even for AREs, events, exposure. But someone from West Virginia doesn't have that kind of exposure. So they're really struggling to keep their young members interested in not only AIA but also the profession. So it's like an exchange of ideas and resources. Again, a great opportunity to make more connections within the whole country. And then just learning from what other chapters are doing, other states are doing, and then kind of bringing back those ideas, collaborating with them in different ways. So it was really interesting. I had a very good time doing that. I knew some people beforehand who I'd met in my DC time, so it was also nice to see some people I'd already known and see how connections you made in the past like come back. So when I was leaving and coming to Austin, I had to give up that role because it's a 2-year role. So when I did give
Mm.
it up, somebody else who wanted to join, she came up to me. There were a lot of people who were interested in it. So they were like, how do we apply for it? What do we do? So just letting them know what opportunities are out there. So yeah, it's like passing on, what you've learned to another person. Um, so yeah, it was a really effective role that I was in, and I had a good time doing that.
Yeah, so in that time, did you find, like, that spot that would help firm owners give value to their unlicensed professionals? Did you find anything from talking to so many people that, between the struggles of a young professional and how they see value versus the communication coming from leadership? Did you find anything in that time?
I wouldn't say we found anything very concrete, but just based on talking to people, I think a lot of young people felt, I think it had to do a little bit with generational differences. Like
Mhm.
people who are in the leadership come from a very different generation. They expect results and like to do things very differently from the younger people. And a lot of young uh, millennials and Gen Zs and all those kind of generations, they have different communication styles. So I thought that was very interesting, just like what the unlicensed architectural designers were expecting from their leadership, but the leadership was just like unaware of this is what they're expecting. Some people don't even want to be licensed. Like back in the
Mhm.
day, most leaderships would, like people who are leading now, that was just the general path. You start working at a firm, you get licensed, you keep working, you keep getting promoted, and one day you'll probably be a principal and partner. Most young professionals are not even interested in that career path anymore. They're
Mhm.
like, we might just leave after a couple of years. We might not even want to be licensed. We might want alternate career paths. And there is definitely a gap between that higher leadership and the young generation who are graduating. That was like very interesting to find out because like how we value the profession is changing because the young generation wants to practice very differently from the traditional architectural practice. So it will take some time to convince the leadership to change their ways. They're gonna not be very open to it, I would say, but they're also unaware of it. So it's
Mhm.
important for us to keep like making these discussions like more accessible to everyone so people can voice their opinions and see how we can better this industry and this the way we practice within architecture. Because anyone I know who studied architecture doesn't want to leave it, but they just leave it because the way it's being practiced, they don't really hate the industry. They're like, we just don't feel valued how we work
Mhm.
here. So yeah, it's an ongoing battle. I want to keep adding my voice to it that we need to keep making this industry better. But yeah, we didn't quite like land on a conclusion or had a
Mhm.
complete concrete solution. But yeah, I think the associate committee still has that a subgroup called the value group, and they're still working on it. So whoever comes after me and after each other, so they keep working on those propositions. So yeah, we'll see some good things come out of it soon.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated by generational differences and,
Yeah.
like, if when I can dig my teeth into them and see the nuances, like, you learn so much and then it makes sense. Like,
Hmm.
when you just, like, sit back and watch, like, different dynamics and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, yeah, I see that, and this is over here," and, like, get it, and
Yeah.
that's just nature of not only how architecture was taught in school in
Hmm.
the different generations, but the technology has changed so
Yeah.
much that,
Yeah.
like, it's crazy how much has changed, but architecture is a weird profession because, if you wanna be a doctor, you have to go fully become a doctor to practice and do that job,
Yeah.
whereas
Hmm.
an architect, you can practice under an architect, and you don't
Hmm.
need a stamp to do exactly what an architect does, because
Yeah.
you can be in the details, so it's weird because you can get that experience and feel like
Hmm.
you're part of it as being unlicensed, but I feel like that hurts the value side
Yeah.
when you don't feel as valued, but it's like it's a weird dynamic. I don't know
Yeah.
how to solve it either.
Yeah. I think we really need to. One thing we kept trying to figure out during that value subgroup was like, what do you call an unlicensed architect? We don't like the
Mhm.
term architectural designer because we're architects. I don't want to be called designer. And in some states, you can't even use the word architectural because it's considered like, the law doesn't allow you to say you're an architectural designer. You have to say I'm a designer. But you went to architecture school. Why would you call yourself a designer? So we were trying to come up with some good titles for people who are not licensed, but it was so hard because nobody could like
Mhm.
accept one title. Like we were like, let's call ourselves architectural associates or something like that, and then people were like, no, I don't like that. So it's difficult because like in let's say if you are training to be a lawyer or till you don't pass the bar, you're a paralegal, and it's a term,
Mhm.
and it's a widely used industry-wide term and it means something, whereas
Yeah.
architectural designer is different. In Texas there might be like architect one or something, so there's no coherent title for someone who's not unlicensed, which I think is why the value is not there, because you don't know how to
Yeah.
value this person. Like, do we value them based on the years of experience or their education, or yeah, so
Mhm.
it's interesting. We tried working on that. We took a poll. We tried to come up with something that would be industry wide, but again, not everybody was excited by that. They had all everybody has their own idea. So it was very interesting to like just see how people think, because you would think like, yeah, there's a solution. Let's just call ourselves architectural associates, but no, people had big issues with that too, or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, so it's ongoing work, and I think we should have something that defines architectural designers who are unlicensed with a title that's industry wide. Maybe in I guess people used to call us apprentices before, but
Mhm.
also or interns, which again doesn't make sense. So there is work that needs to be done in the industry to bridge that gap, and hopefully we can come on have a consensus soon on that. But that would take some
Yeah.
time.
I always like the architectural apprentice because
Yeah.
that's most related to how we're learning is
Hmm.
through others, and that's how they do in the trades.
Yeah.
But then the engineers, they'll put engineer in training, and I think in
Yeah.
California this year, they got the architect in training
Yeah. That
name
was
approved.
one of the options we were voting for, architect in training, which actually is the best definition of what we are
Mhm.
until we're licensed. But I guess it doesn't cover for people who've been in the industry for, let's say, a decade or more, and they just don't have
Just
any plans
don't.
to get that. They don't want to
Yep.
get licensed, but you can't call them architect in training when they're like already been in the profession for 20 years. They're already trained, I
Exactly.
would say. So it's again a very difficult title to have. Maybe we need more than one title, but yeah, not having those kind of official titles has been difficult to navigate yourself within the industry and within different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cause
yeah,
it's hard to find that, like, term, like, you use paralegal as a term, like,
yeah,
everybody knows
yeah,
paralegal, so it's like you need to come up with a term that the public that has never studied architecture and knows nothing about architecture would understand the term.
yeah,
So it's like emerging professional that came out for a while, and I was like,
hmm,
"I don't even know how to explain that to
yeah,
somebody because it's
yeah,
so out in left field." But
yeah,
one
yeah.
day.
One
We'll
day.
figure it out.
One day.
But I want to jump over to Austin because you're doing a lot over there and you've only been there a year. So I
Yeah.
know you've been a part of the Austin Leadership Collective
Hmm.
program. Can you tell us more about that program
Yeah.
and what you get to do over there?
Hmm. Yes, it's a really amazing program that they have here at AIA Austin. So basically, it's a 10-month leadership program. We meet on the first Friday of each month for half a day and go over different concepts of leadership. It's broken down into three. Basically, first is learning about yourself as a leader, like what is your leadership style? Then how do you work in teams? And then how do you work in a system, which is like a bigger, broader organization? And a lot of the program is around sort of even questioning the systems and questioning yourself because we all come with these ideas that our way is the best way, or if I think this way, everybody, now, Caitlin, you should also think the same way as I think. But that has been the most biggest revelation for me is that not everybody thinks the way I think, or what is considered a big challenge for me might not be a challenge for someone else. So I was really lucky enough to be a part of this program. So I moved to Austin last year in October, and at WRA where I work, our principal in charge here at the Austin office, he was part of the program as well a few years ago. So he was really encouraging of our office to whoever wants to participate should apply. And I was just like new, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'll just do this. This might be my way to meet more people in Austin. And luckily, I got into it. They usually have a cohort of 18 to 20 people, and it's there are people from all different experience levels, like young architects and unlicensed architects, but also interior designers, landscape architects, and allied professionals. And so our cohort was also a mix of all of those. And then you start your session in January, and then in your first session, we get to also work with a professional, like a leadership coach. Her name is Judy Lee. She works out of Houston, so she comes to Austin for a 2-day workshop. And then she comes back again in September to sort of recap all that we've been working on. And then in October, we do have our final graduation. And during the course of these 10 months, we also have fellows from the AIA that are our mentors. So we're paired with a partner within the collective. So I had one partner that I was working with, and then we had a fellow of the AIA that we were in a group with, and an alumni of the program. So it's like a 4-person
Mm,
group. So it's
okay.
like different like experience levels, different things they've done. Like the alumni has been part of the program, so they can share their experience. And the fellow that I was assigned with, he was originally from Dallas, so he moved to Austin a couple of years ago. So he's also trying to like meet more people in Austin, but he has a wealth of knowledge from
Hmm.
he's had a 40-year career in Dallas. So it was interesting because he was using us to learn about the AIA Austin, and we were using him to learn about all his cool things. He has built this amazing house here in Austin, so he gave us a tour of that. I mean, I wasn't expecting to come out of this program with so many new connections and so much new knowledge. But it was amazing, and that's sort of how I ended up becoming more involved in AIA Austin because I would go there every month for at least the collective sessions. And again, just learning about your own leadership styles. Like we do a personality assessment test in the beginning, then we learn how our leadership styles are affected by that, and then sort of learn to unlearn our ways of thinking and like question, be a more empathetic leader, just try to like think about the other person's perspective. um, each class has a small homework assignment that you do with your partner. It's not a very imposing, like you have to do this or we have a presentation at the end. It's pretty easy going. But it is definitely eye opening. I mean,
Hmm.
I've been telling everyone after that you should apply for it. So there are a few more people who have applied for the next cohort from my office. So hopefully they'll get in as well. Um, and I've always wanted to be a part of a leadership program because even in New York, there was something similar called the Torch Mentorship Program. And then in DC, they have the Christopher Kelly
Hmm.
program, which is also in a lot of other states. And I never really ever got a chance to be part of any of those programs for one reason or another. So when I got this opportunity, I was like, I'm going to do this. And this program is very unique to Austin. Like it was specifically developed for this community, and it came through the Women in Architecture Committee, and then it's been an award-winning program for the chapter. So yeah, definitely a great experience.
Yeah, we have one that Pittsburgh made for
Hmm.
themselves. Like they don't do
Yeah.
Christopher Kelly. I presented this year at DC's Christopher Kelly
Oh, okay. Cool.
workshop. So that was fun to see that program versus what I
Hmm.
experienced in Pittsburgh. But when my cohort went through, it was just architects. And
Hmm.
after my cohort, they started opening it up to interior designers and engineers. I don't think they've opened it up to allied members, but
Yeah.
that's fascinating to me, having all those different cross-disciplinary
Yeah.
connections, because it's not just architects that put together buildings. There's so much more in terms of that network. But
Hmm.
then I love how they connect you also with a fellow and an alumni
Yeah.
of the past program. So beyond just connecting with people, but connecting with different
Yeah.
levels of people
Hmm.
to like
Hmm.
gain that mentorship. Um,
Correct.
that's
Hmm.
fascinating. I think I'm gonna have to go talk to my AI
Yeah.
Pittsburgh crew and be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, for the next cohort, you got to listen to see what the Austin Leadership Collective's putting together and see if I can
Yeah.
get them to transform it a little bit."
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Like having the fellows is very interesting because, again, like I said, the generational gap is there, and they have the very interesting stories from their time practicing. And I'm like, those stories don't exist anymore. Those things, I
mhm.
mean, I can't even be at the same job for 40 years. I don't think I can be there. And like our fellow was telling him that he tried leaving his job for other opportunities in the 40-year career he had. Every time he would leave, their office would be like, "Don't leave. We'll give you this huge pay bump and make you a principal." And I'm like, I don't see that happening anymore. But it's very interesting that there was once that very nice career path laid out for architects, and it was a profession that people saw that you could work in. Again, the value maybe was there back then, which has kind
Mhm.
of been lost, and people have changed. They don't want to do traditional practices anyways. So again, so I guess he was also very interested in learning that you have already had 3 jobs in your 6-year career or like 7-year career, and I never even switched one job in 40 years. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, this is how it is now. People have to move to different jobs for various reasons. And
Yeah.
also, my generation, we want to do new things. We want to do different things. We are not happy with just being in the same thing forever. So yeah, that kind of you know bonding with a fellow it was very interesting.
Yeah, and even for his generation, because it's a generation thing, people didn't change jobs all
No.
the time,
Yeah.
but they were generally appreciated in getting like pay bumps and moving forward and
Hmm.
climbing up the ladder. But then, like my generation, it's like, well, you hit a bunch of recessions and
Yeah.
COVID, like there's layoffs all the time. So there's not that like loyalty job security mentality anymore because I could
Yeah.
get laid off at any time.
Hmm.
But then if you want any kind of salary bump, that value isn't there. So talking back
Yeah.
to like valuing your licensed and unlicensed architects, if
Hmm.
you're not keeping up with at least inflation, if not more, you're
Yeah.
not showing the value back to them that they used to
Hmm.
for the more
Yeah.
senior generation. So it's like the changing times changes how we have to react and move and do
Correct.
things.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
no, I haven't left cities like you have. So that's definitely an excuse to leave a firm.
Yeah.
But I've definitely not stayed at one firm for 40
Yeah.
years or my whole career. So, and now for 2026, you're going to be transitioning to the AIA Austin chair. So
The Women in Architecture Committee.
yes, the Women in
Yeah.
Architecture um, chapter within it.
Hmm.
Um, what are your goals in shifting and doing work with WIA?
Yeah. Well, this is a very special sort of full circle moment for me because I even got involved in AIA in the first place because of
Mm-hmm.
the Women in Architecture Committee in DC. And then I've always been connected to when I was in New York. And when I came here, I'll be honest, I didn't really attend a lot of their events last year because I was really busy with moving to a new city. But I would keep track of what they're doing, and they have such amazing programs. They have so many different scholarships for students, and they have a scholarship for the Leadership Collective for women of diverse backgrounds. And then there's something called the Austin Homes Tour, so which is like an
Hmm.
event that happens every fall. They sponsor 2 houses for that. So there's a lot of amazing give back they do to the community and to help strengthen women's connection to the Austin built industry. And I feel very privileged to be able to help them out in that some way, because Alexandra and Danielle, who are the current co-chairs for this year, they just reached out to me one day. They're like, "Would you be interested?" And I'm like, I first thought about it. I was like, "This looks like a lot of work. You guys do so much work. You have like 2 events every month." I don't know. I mean, I used to be a co-chair for emerging professionals in New York, and I did do a lot of work back then for that. But I feel like you guys are on top of this. This is amazing. It's like all women in architecture committees are so well organized. Like you need to look at their Google Drive. Like everything's under folders. Everything's this perfect. And I was like, you know what? I think I should just say yes to this because I need to learn this organizational skills. And so we have a lot of amazing things that we are going to be doing in the next year. So, like I said, we have our Donna D. Carter Scholars Program, which is we try to sponsor 2 to 3 women students in at UT Austin. So we're accepting um, applications for that right now. And then there's a huge dinner for that we'll be doing next year in April. And then a bunch of other scholarships. And then, things like resume and portfolio workshops, site tours. Also, we like to collaborate with the other committees like the LGBTQ plus committee or the emerging professionals, which again is great because then you see different age groups and experience levels sort of intermingle, cross generational, cross collaborative. I love that. And yeah, we have some things already on the calendar, but we're also going to plan more things in January because we kind of like don't do anything big in January. So it's going to be an exciting year, and I'm going to be sort of shadowing Danielle, who's going to be the chair, like the main chair for
Main chair next
2026.
year.
And then after she steps back, after at the end of 2026, I'll be the chair elect for that year. So I have to learn all the ways, and then sort of have a plan for my own tenure in 2027. So it's a 2-year commitment.
Hmm.
And yeah, we have a really good structure because even though we're the co-chairs, we have a lot of subcommittee chairs. So, we have a committee on motherhood and different panels we do. So people are just, very involved in whatever they want to be focused on. So we just help delegate tasks and give them the resources they need in order to have successful events. So yeah, that will be an exciting new challenge on something more on my plate, as if I didn't already have enough. But no, Austin's a great community, so I'm really excited to get more involved in it. And this is the best way to do it, is just to jump into it.
Jump in and run. I know
Yeah,
the We Austin group, they do so much. I applaud
yeah,
everybody that's running the committee, the subcommittees, everything. I've attended some of the um, monthly calls. I've attended some of the live sessions. I've been a guest, and everything you guys do is amazing. You do so
yeah.
much. Speaking from another smaller city, it's like we have nothing near that for the women in architecture. So that's why I'm always calling into Austin or telling
Yeah,
people to look at what Austin's doing.
yeah, definitely. Like Austin, I wouldn't say is a big architecture city. Like Dallas and Houston would, I would say, have more members. But
Hmm.
even for the size we are, the WIA committee is very successful. And in order, like, just in terms of like doing all the events and having people sign up for it, that's a big achievement for not being the biggest city in Texas or anything like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's a good blueprint for someone who wants to start their own chapter and then see it grow, even in a state like which is not as big as Texas. So yeah, always happy to collaborate with people if they need any kind of support. Yeah,
Yeah. And I always like wrapping up my podcast with this final question. And it's, what advice do you have for young professionals just starting their careers?
wow, that is a difficult
It's
one
it's the
because
loaded last question.
I also feel like this is such a difficult time to graduate. Like in the last couple of years, it's been really hard for people to find jobs, especially right out of school. And I really sympathize with them because you want to be employed as soon as you leave college. But I think the I guess one advice I have is something that I did in my career is not feel like you don't have options. Like if you don't feel like you are happy in your workplace or in what you're doing, don't be scared to not take the risk. Like if you feel like moving to a new city will give you more opportunities, then believe in yourself and do it. Be strategic about it. Don't just jump into it blindly. Do some research, but you know, pivoting from the very traditional path is fine. And I think I have done it a couple of times, moving cities, moving countries. It's daunting, but it's worth the effort and worth the risk. And if something doesn't go the right way that you expected it to go in your career, you can always come back to architecture and just like redo it. Like there's no failure in the sense that, oh, my life's over kind of failure. You can always reemerge from it. So just be confident. If you feel like you want to do something new, just try it, and you won't regret it. I feel like you'll be happy that you made that decision. So be bold, I guess, with your decisions and go for it.
Yeah, because you always learn something. Nothing's
Yeah.
ever like a failure, whether it's, if you want to go work for a contractor, because that's where the jobs are in
Yeah.
your city, you're going to learn so much
Yeah.
about like putting an actual building together and seeing what documents are put together by design teams that
Hmm.
if you then wanted to go back and be an actual architect and work for an architecture firm, that experience is going to be so valuable for that other
Hmm.
position, even though
Yeah.
they're two different tracks and they may
Yeah.
seem very different.
Correct. Yeah. I
But
mean, I did something similar when I wanted to work in the cultural and institutional projects. I had no such projects in my portfolio when I was in DC. So finding a job at a design firm was becoming really difficult. But when I got my job at Cooper Robinson, they said, hey, we're executive architects. We have really cool projects here, but we're not designing them. We're making them, building them. Like we're doing the design like all the construction documents. And at first I was like, this is not what I want to do. I want to be a design architect.
mhm.
But then I was like, you know what? This is my only way to get into this kind of work. And maybe I learned something. And to be honest, you learn the most in the CDCA phase of any project. Like you can design anything that looks pretty on paper, but how do you build it? And that is a knowledge that we never get in school. So it was a rewarding experience. I took a risk and I was like, let's see what comes out of it. But it really informed my knowledge as an architect. I gained so much technical understanding of how buildings are formed and put together. So it was a worthwhile decision. It was not exactly what I wanted, but it gave me access to cultural and institutional projects, but in a different sort of from a different perspective. Yeah, like you were saying, you always gain something from even a failure. So
Yeah.
definitely try something new.
Always gain knowledge or gain at least knowing what you don't want to do. That's
Yeah,
probably the other
yeah.
part of it. So,
Hmm.
no. But I wanted to thank you, Tuba, for taking the time to speak with me today. I know you're doing
Yeah.
so much down there. So I
Well,
appreciate it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. This was amazing. Um, I look forward to all the other podcast episodes that are going to come in the new year. And
Yes.
yeah, it's great talking to you.
I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Learn some advice to take with you and see how our industry is all tied together to create the world around us. Check out the description below for any links or resources we discussed. If you liked the episode, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support finding that career path that best works for them. If you know someone that has inspired your own career that you'd like me to interview, let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me via my website or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share their story or your own. Thank you again, and I cannot wait for the next career story I get to share with you next week.